Hello everyone and welcome to Beta G Dynamics playlist of my channel. As you know, in the fast evolving crypto market, understanding the potential risks and strategic dynamics is important for anyone involved, whether you are an investor, trader, or enthusiast. In this video, I will explore the hypothetical scenario about the Hamster Kombat platforms by game theory to analyze how fraud risk can emerge in a cryptocurrency setting. To be more detailed, game theory allows us to model and predict the behavior of different players in the market, from central entities like Hamster to users, that are a variety of different users and players, that includes investors, exchanges, and regulators. And by understanding these interactions, I can uncover the potential incentives and risks that might lead to prominent crypto entities to engage in fraudulent behavior, and how such actions could impact everyone involved and have a role in this game. In fact, my goal today is to provide you with a deeper understanding of the strategic decisions that can influence the stability and integrity of the crypto markets, the cryptocurrency platform. This knowledge will empower you to make more informed decisions in the markets, helping you identify potential red flags and avoid possible pitfalls. However, it is important to remember that while I strive to provide accurate and valuable insights, all investment decisions are ultimately your responsibility. The crypto market, as we know, is a highly volatile, and this video should not be considered as a financial advice. Please remember, always do your own research and consult with the financial advisor if necessary. With that said, let's dive into the Hamster Kombat scenario and see what game theory can reveal about the risk in the world of cryptocurrency. In the second video of Hamster Kombat video series, I try to delve into the process of estimating the likelihood that Hamster Kombat is a scam generally. By analyzing various risk factors, we can assess the overall probability of fraudulent behavior within the platform. And this estimation provides valuable insights for users, investors, and regulators to make informed decisions. According to the past explanation, our first step in determining the probability of Hamster Kombat scam is to identify the key risk factors. In fact, we need to estimate the probability of hamster being a scam with focus on 4 critical risk factors. The first risk factor is fraud indicators. The second one is historical data. The third is market perception. And finally, in the fourth place, we have regulatory scrutiny. Let's start to explain what is the fraud indicator as our first risk factor. We examine the presence of red flags such as inconsistent financial reporting, user complaints, or suspicious transactions as a fraud indicator. In the second level, we want to analyze the historical data risk factors. In the historical data, we assess the platform's history and considering any previous allegations, operational issues, or questionable activities under the historical data risk factors. In the market perception, we analyze the sentiment of users, investors, and industry experts regarding to the platform legitimacy. And finally, in the regulatory scrutiny, we evaluate the level of attention and scrutiny about the hamster received from the regulators, including any ongoing investigations. After understanding the 4 main risk factors, this is the time to modeling risk factors with probability distributions. Because we need to probability distributions in the reason that I will explain to you in the next parts. Each of the identified risk factors is modeled using the probability distributions and reflecting the likelihood of their occurrence. So, for the first one, the fraud indicators, we use probability ranging from the low to high. The lowest is 10%, the middle is 50%, and the highest is 90%. We need to determine this range to represent the severity of potential red flags. In the second risk factor, historical data, we assign probability based on the platform's past performance and any known issues. And this range starts from 10% in the minimum part, 30% at the middle, and 70% in the highest part. And in the third risk factor, market perceptions, we capture the spectrum of market sentiment from the mild concerns to strong negative perceptions. So, the minimum level of probability distributions in the market perception is 20%, the middle is 50%, and the highest level is 80%. And for our final risk factor, regulatory scrutiny, we consider the probability of regulatory actions based on the platform visibility and existing legal inquiries. That the spectrum starts from 10%, 40% at the middle, and 80% in highest level. After determinations of probability distributions for each risk factors, this is a time to running the Monte Carlo simulations. The Monte Carlo simulation is a powerful tool to estimating complex probability by simulating thousands of possible scenarios, and in this case we simulate 10,000 possible scenarios to aggregate the impact of the 4 risk factors. And the simulation generates random values for each risk factor based on their respective probability distribution that I explained to you in the past part, and then combine them to estimate overall probability that Hamster is a scam. And the final overall probability of the Monte Carlo simulation in this case equal with this number, 0.039, that is about 4%. So let's interpret with together about the 4% result of Monte Carlo simulation in the past part. In fact, after running the simulations, we find that the estimated probability of Hamster being a scam is approximately 4%, and this relatively low percentage suggests that while there are some risk factor present, the overall likelihood of fraudulent behavior is moderate. However, this probability should be carefully considered by stakeholders and different players, as even a small chance of fraud can have significant consequences. So, the estimated scam probability provides a data-driven perspective on the potential risk associated with hamsters, users, investors, and regulators that can use this information to assess their involvement with these platforms. While the probability is not alarmingly high, it serves as a reminder to remain vigilant and conduct due diligence before making decisions related to the platforms. And after these explanations, we want to integrate the scam probability into strategic decisions, because we need this information for decision making. So the payoff matrices reflect the potential outcome based on the various strategies, and the probability of hamster being a scam inform these outcomes. So in the risk assessment part, we have the 4% scam probabilities serve as a risk factors in the matrices influencing the likelihood of adverse outcomes. For example, loss of user base, financial losses, and legal issues. And in the second part, in the strategic choices, the key players use this probability to make more informed decisions and balancing their potential rewards with the risk associated with the frauds. For example, user might tolerate a low scam probability, but investor may decide that even a 4% chance of fraud is too high for continued investment. So different players have the different reactions to these results. And finally, the compatibility and the strategic value of this result. In fact, the calculated scam probability is entirely compatible with the payoff matrix, as it quantifies the underlying risk that informs each player's strategies by incorporating the probability into the matrices. the analyzing becomes more robust and allowing for more precise evaluations of the potential outcomes of different strategic choices. This integration helps all stakeholders better understand the risk involved and make decisions that align with their risk tolerance and objectives. So let's see this integration with together and continue. To calculate the Nash equilibrium for each of the matrices, we need to identify the strategies where no players can benefit by unilaterally changing their strategies, given the strategies of the others. In other words, in the Nash equilibrium, each player's strategy is the best response to the strategies chosen by the other players. Let's consider the simplified version of hamster payoff matrix in this case. In this matrix, we have honest operations and fraudulent operations. So in the honest operations and the user trust, we have the yield stable long-term outcomes. And in the fraudulent operations and user withdrawals, we have resulted in an immediate gains but significant long-term risk. Given the probability of hamster being honest is high, it is 96% as we can see here in this part of the payoff matrix. So the Nash equilibrium is honest operations and user trust here. So investor would likely support the platform if it's operating honestly. Because of the high probability of 96%, they would divest if they detect the likelihood of frauds. So the Nash equilibrium for investors is support and honest operations. Let's see together the next payoff matrices for the next player. So the next players is exchanges. Exchanges are incentivized to list hamster token when the probability of the honest operations is high, in this case about 96%, and they would consider the listing if the fraud probability is increases. So the Nash equilibrium is listing and honest operations, 96%. And same for the next players. For the users, user will prefer also to trust if hamsters is to operating honestly, which has a high probability of 96%. However, if they suspect fraud, they might withdraw. So the Nash equilibrium for users is the cross of trust and operations with the highest level of probability is 96%. Final users, regulators. Regulators are likely also to monitor if hamster is operating honestly with a 96%, and unnecessary intervention can be costly. So however, they would intervene if there is a significant chance of fraud, but the Nash equilibrium for regulators also monitors an honest operation with the highest degree of possibility, 96%. In summary, across all the matrices, the Nash equilibrium generally occurs when each player selects the strategy that align with the high probability of the hamster operating honestly, about 96%. This means that hamster is more likely to operate honestly because user, investors, exchange, and regulators are more likely to trust, support, list, and monitor the platforms when it is honest. Users, investors, and exchange will prefer to remain engaged with hamster as long as they believe it is operating honestly, and regulators will prefer to monitor rather than intervene as long as hamster is perceived to be honest. And the equilibrium highlights all players' best response are aligned with hamsters is honest, which support stability in the markets. So why fraud might occur despite of high stakes? Until this moment we say that the most probably there is no too much incentives for hamster to engage in the fraudulent behavior, about a 96%. But why fraud might occur despite of high stakes? There are three important reasons that still fraud might be occurred. The first one is incentives for short-term gains. So even with the significant risk, the potential for short-term financial gains might incentivize fraudulent behaviors. The second reason that may fraud behaviors take place is overconfidence. Perhaps Hamster Kombat platform might overestimate their ability to evade detections or manage the fallouts. And finally, there is a regulatory gaps. If regulatory oversight is weak or delayed, hamster might perceive a lower risk of getting caught. So still there is a danger and probability of fraud. But if this fraud takes place, what will the possible effect in the different players and hamsters? Who damage more and who damage less? What will happen after fraud if fraud takes place to the hamster platform in the cryptocurrency? So what is the potential consequences of the fraud? This is questions and the subjects that I will answer to you in my next video. So this is an important issue that we will dealing with that in the next sessions and video. So please make sure to subscribe and stay tuned for the next video in this series. Thank you for your attention.